Hello there. Sorry about that. I'm setting up again in the library at the Bedford County Library in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and it took a little longer than expected. We had a couple technical issues I had to work out, but we're here, and hopefully you're having a good time. Hopefully you're seeing what's going on. I'm looking over here to try and keep track of the chat, so if I step off screen, I'm still getting this stuff worked out. Welcome, Everyday Americans. I am Paul Engel. I'm here with the Constitution Study. I'm glad you could join me. I'm glad you're staying with me as I work out some of these technical details. What I'm trying to do is be more open to my local community, allow an opportunity for people to come and have more of a direct interaction, have people here that can ask me questions, people here that can monitor the chat and let me know what's going on. I want to end up with a better product, which is why I'm a little disappointed in myself that I wasn't quite ready for you when this all started. But with that said, as always, please head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Let me know what you think. Comment on YouTube, comment on Facebook. Yes, this is on Facebook. I'll be posting the video to the website and YouTube later. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there are subjects you'd like me to cover. Let me know if there are ways you can help the Constitution Study. Maybe you'll buy a couple of books. Maybe you're willing to donate. Maybe you're willing to share some information. Hey, maybe you're willing to have me come to and speak to one of your groups. I've been doing that lately. And I'm still working out the bugs, but I'm working out a system where I can do it over the internet. So even if you're not in the Middle Tennessee area, yes, you can have me come speak to your group over this wonderful thing we call the internet. So it's been an interesting start to the year, a lot of headaches, but I'm still enjoying what's going on. The book is still running a bit behind. Long story I'm not going to get into here. Mostly what I want to do is I want to talk about what happened that weekend between Christmas and New Year, and maybe look at something I haven't heard anybody talk about in the past. Now, we all know we have a Second Amendment. At least I hope we all know there's a Second Amendment to the Constitution, and we should generally know what it says. Quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, there's a couple things that we should notice about this that relate to what's been going on. You see, a lot of emphasis is placed on the term militia in the Second Amendment, but little consideration is given to the reason why one is important, why the people have a right to keep and bear arms, and why it is protected by the Constitution. The events between Christmas and New Year this year shows just how important it is, our right to keep and bear arms, and that it needs to be protected, and why it should not be infringed on except as punishment for criminal behavior. Now, I'm sure you all know there was a shooting in Texas, and if you can stomach watching the video, it is very informative. It's as informative as it is disturbing. You see, the video shows a verbal interchange between the soon-to-be killer and someone standing along a wall. Just 6 seconds later, 2 parishioners and the killer are shot dead. That is 6 seconds from the time a life was threatened until 3 lives were gone. Those 6 seconds have changed the lives of an unknown number of people. Not just those who were shot and their families, but also the other members of the congregation in attendance, and by extension, everybody in the nation who's seen it. Whether your reaction is for or against what the actions taken by the parishioners. In fact, almost every member of every congregation in the United States, you've probably been changed by this incident. If not for the preparation, willingness, and quick reaction of a man willing to keep and bear arms, who knows how many others would have been killed. Now, while I do not know the specific average response time for police in White Settlement, Texas, nationally, I believe the average is about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That is 300 seconds. That is 50 times the amount time it took for 3 people to be shot. Now, count that out with me, right? 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, bang! Now keep counting until you reach 300. Imagine the terror of trying to save your life in that situation. Imagine your fear for your spouse, your other loved ones. Imagine the heartbreak of a parent who may watch their child be shot and die. How secure do you feel right now? Now imagine you're in that church, and it's right after the shooting. Sure, you're probably scared. You may be looking for your loved ones or trying to call family, but do you feel secure? More importantly, are you secure? Yes, because you had someone who had taken the time and the effort to be ready for just such a situation. He had not only prepared for it, but he was willing to act, to risk his own life to save yours. You may be terrified, but in fact, you are secure. Your security was not protected by the police or by any government agent, but by a citizen who was exercising a right protected by the Second Amendment and willing to use it to help protect your life. Now do you see why we have a Second Amendment? Now, if Texas was on one side, the stabbing in the New York rabbi's home was on the other. See, in New York, a murderer entered the Rockland County home of Rabbi Chaim Rottenberg. And it was during the Hanukkah celebration. And they stabbed several people before fleeing the home. You see, unlike Texas, the people only defended themselves by throwing furniture at their attacker. That's all they had. Their only hope of security was that the police would arrive before the attacker got to them. Even after the attacker fled, there was no serious deterrent to his returning to continuing his stabbing spree. Now, how secure do you think Rabbi Rottenberg's family feels tonight, or the others that were attending the service? More importantly, how secure are they? How secure are the rest of those that were celebrating the Jewish holiday with them? Do you think the people that stood outside holding signs the next day would provide any security? These people were all but defenseless before their attacker, reduced to waiting for rescue from their government. So the question I bring is, what do these two incidents have to do with the security of a free state? See, the parishioners in Texas were not dependent on a state or local government to secure their lives and their liberties. Now, there are those in Texas today who are secure and alive because people were willing to defend themselves and others rather than waiting for someone sent by the government to defend it for them. Meanwhile, the families in New York were stuck, waiting, hoping they would survive. They did not keep or bear arms to defend themselves, so they were not secure. See, if we are to be secure, then we need to be prepared to secure ourselves. Otherwise, we are not secure, but we're dependent on others. We're dependent on government. Yes, the primary purpose our founders gave for the Second Amendment is to ensure that we can protect ourselves from our governments. And to those who say that can never happen, please read my article on the Battle of Athens. I'll put a link in the description. It also means we can defend ourselves against anyone who would infringe on our right to life and liberty. The preamble of the Constitution states that one of the reasons it was created is to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Whenever we allow the Constitution to be violated, we are not securing the blessings of liberty, we are subverting them. We can see from these two events the difference between securing the blessings of liberty and subverting them. Ask yourself, when someone is coming to take your life, would you rather have been in the Texas church or the New York home? Where do you think your liberties and those of your children were most secure? Any question after that is nothing but sophistry. So while I mourn for those who were killed and injured during these two events, while I mourn and pray for their families and even the others who have been directly impacted, I ask the American people, which one of these secured the blessings of liberty? We have before us a perfect example of why we have the Second Amendment. Whether that person was a shooter, the shooter in Texas who just wanted to murder people, a person who just wanted to stab people in New York, or a government coming to take your stuff, the right of the people to keep and bear arms is so that we can protect and secure our own blessings of liberty. We have become dependent on others. We have been trained and taught that what we should do is be good little sheep and sit there cowering, waiting for a person with the right uniform to come save us. Well, how many people in Texas would have died if they had waited for the police to show up? We'll never know. But I can pretty much guarantee it would be more than 3. At least that would be what I expected. The flip side is, how many people would have been stabbed in New York if even one of the people in that house was able to pull a gun? Even if they didn't shoot the attacker, quite often simply the presence of a gun in the hands of a good guy are enough to make bad guys run. Are we going to secure our own blessings of liberty, or are we going to become more and more dependent on others to secure it for us? That's the question. Now, I don't know what you got from those 2 events, but that's what I got. That's what I saw that nobody else seems to be talking about. And that's the discussion I'd like to have. What do you think? Who secured their blessings of liberty? The people in Texas or the people in New York? Let me take a look at the site, see what we've got here, see if I have any questions popping up. We got a couple people on, but no questions yet. So I'm going to encourage you. And I apologize for having to step off screen. I'm trying to set up the room for the local people, but I don't have any here tonight. So, my cables are not quite as long as I'd hoped they'd be. And I wanted to get started on time. I didn't want everybody waiting for what's going on. But ask the question. Let's start the discussion. Yes, the right of the people to keep and bear arms is protected. But what do we say about the security of a free state? How free is your state if you have to wait for the government to show up to protect you? You see, that's what I've been working on a lot lately. I'm working on a series of webinars and speeches I'll be giving throughout January and February. And I'm dealing a lot with some of the early parts of the Constitution and why we have a Constitution and what it's trying to protect. You see, I've heard this before, and you may have heard it, when someone says you don't need a certain gun in order to protect you from a deer, they've missed the point. A well-regulated militia, an armed populace, is necessary to live to secure a free state. Think about that for a minute. You see, if you go back and read my article on the Battle of Athens, you think about everyday people who took up arms against a corrupt local government, a corrupt county government. They did. And by doing that, they got rid of the corrupt government and instituted a free one. Gee, almost like the Declaration of Independence. It says, whenever any government becomes destructive of our rights, paraphrasing, it is the right of the people to alter and abolish it. How do you alter or abolish a government if the government is the only one with arms, the only one with power, the only one with force? How do you secure yourself? I think about the riots in Baltimore and Ferguson, where it wasn't the police that protected the local businesses. It was themselves and their neighbors that showed up to secure their liberty, secure the blessing of liberty for themselves. And if there's one thing that I've noticed over the last several months is this ingrained approach that, well, no, the government's supposed to do it. Somebody else is supposed to do it. Somebody else should be taking care of that. But that's not what our founding fathers set up. Our founding fathers set up a system so that we could take care of ourselves. You know, the preamble of the Constitution says that they wanted to create a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. It wasn't the founding fathers that did that. In order to do that, they established a constitution that, among other things, now protects certain rights. A constitution that created a federal government that was limited to a certain set of enumerated powers. But we've let that genie out of the bottle. We've let the genie go, and then we wonder why it keeps running away. To the point where the Constitution is a prop. No, they didn't set it up so that the government would give us these things. They set up a system where we could maintain them for ourselves. And to me, that weekend was a perfect example of why. A perfect example of how important it is to stop waiting for the government to fix something. To stop waiting for the government to take care of you. To stop waiting for the government to protect you. To not even expect the government to protect you. Because if you're waiting for the government to protect you, you're no longer a sovereign entity. You're a subject. You belong to an entity that will protect you. Because now the government decides when and how it will protect you. And the Supreme Court has stated on at least one occasion, if not more, that police do not have a duty to protect you. So here we are saying, no, we won't protect ourselves. We'll hire professionals to do it, but they're not required to do it. And don't get me wrong, I hold the vast majority of police in great esteem. Most of them, duty or not, they will come to protect you. They will come save your butt. But when the government says they don't have to, what happens either when an officer or a leader in a law enforcement agency decides, no, we're not going to protect that part of town because it's too dangerous for our people. We'll protect the rich part of town where all the influential people are. What happens when they say, no, we're not going to protect this group because, well, we don't really like what they say. We'll only protect this other group because we like what they say. No, we're not going to protect you when this group goes rioting because, well, we're afraid we'll make them mad. And each one of those events, each one of those instances has happened in recent history. I don't know what it's going to take for Americans to wake up. I mean, right now, one guy talking to a camera. The question is, and I hear this a lot, right? What can one person do? What can one person do? Me, I can't do much of anything. Except maybe get your attention. Except maybe open a few eyes, help you get a little education, help encourage you to do the right thing, help you to think for yourself, learn for yourself, and secure your own blessings of liberty. Maybe I can change a few minds. Maybe I can change the mind of a couple local politicians. Yes, I'm meeting with my local politicians. But it's still up to me to help you and then you to help others. Which is why I keep asking you, share these messages. Yet maybe people won't listen, but maybe one or two will. You know, it's taken us well over 100 years to make this mess. It's not going to magically get fixed overnight, regardless of who you put in what office. But the important thing is for us to start thinking and educating ourselves. Then maybe we'll make a difference. Maybe not even in our lifetimes. Maybe we'll have a tiny difference in our life. Maybe your children's lifetime. Wouldn't you like it if your children lived in a land that's freer than the one you were born into? Wouldn't you love it if your grandchildren were born into a land that was freer than the one their parents were brought into? The only way that happens is when we stop waiting for someone else to secure our blessings of liberty and start doing it for ourselves. And when government decides to get in the way, we remind them who's boss. We tell them no, and then we support each other when that happens. I'm very curious what's going on in Virginia. The legislature is now putting out the legislation they had proposed, and I think something like 90% of the counties have now declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, and that's great. But what happens when the state police show up? Will the sheriffs stand up? Will the people support their sheriff? Will the people support their county, whatever their county officers are? Will the people join in and say, yes, you've said you want to protect our rights, we will stand up and help you. Maybe they're not even coming after you. Maybe they're coming after your neighbor or the guy across the county. Doesn't matter. Will we stand up and protect our rights rather than waiting for someone else to protect them for us? You know, I remember several years ago, Kansas passed a law that said, any firearm accessory made and sold within the state of Kansas is not subject to ATF rules, and if a federal agent comes in and tries to enforce those laws, then they will be prosecuted. And it was great until somebody actually listened to them. And someone made a suppressor in the state of Kansas and sold it to someone else in the state of Kansas. And ATF came and arrested them and prosecuted them. And the legislature and the governor of Kansas were silent. They were all ready to pound their chests and, look at what we're doing, until they actually had to do something beyond speeches and votes. Will we get beyond speeches and votes? Are you prepared to defend your liberties, your life, your property, your liberties? Are you prepared to defend your family's life, liberty, property? If you go to church or you go to synagogue or you go to any event, are you prepared to defend your life and those of your family and those of your neighbor? We are there to secure the blessings of liberty. If you want a secure state, if you want to live where you don't need a firearm, then live where everybody's got one. Because then criminals don't like those places. So I'm looking here, I'm not seeing any questions. I've been on almost half an hour. Looks like a pretty quiet night again. So I'm still looking for feedback. I've been doing this for a little more than a year now. Not all of it, the live stream, but the writing and the podcasting and now the videos I've been building up to over a year. And I see some things working up very well, and I see some things are a little stalled. So I would appreciate, again, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Let me know what you think. Give me a comment, ask a question. If you have an idea, something that you think would help spread this message. You know, I'm always torn between, I want to do more and more of this, but it's kind of hard to do all on my own. So individuals that are willing to help, maybe become an insider, maybe join the insider group where you can support the work that I'm doing, and you'll get early access to content, and you'll get we'll have special insider only events, online events where we can get together and discuss topics and strategize and do all that type of stuff. Maybe you'll join the insider group. I have several groups that are asking me to speak at their events or do webinars at their events. Maybe you'll have one of those. I love doing those. If you're in North Dakota, I'm going to be in Bismarck in February. I'm teaching a class all day at the Heritage Center about, it's to middle schoolers about the Constitution. A constitutional primer, I call it. If you've got other events you'd like me to join while I'm out there, reach out and let me know. Again, I saw a lot of discussions, and I talked about this in a previous podcast about the apathy that we see. Are we going to work to make things better? Are we going to open our minds to the ideas that we don't want to be dependent on government, or do we? Do we just want to be dependent on government and pretend that the Constitution still matters, pretend we live in a free country? The decision ultimately is ours. I mean, as much as we like to blame other people, it's ours. And just as people in New York might have complained about how long it took the police to show up when the stabbing was reported, I look at the people in Texas and say, we ain't waiting. We're ready to defend ourselves now. So with that, if I don't have any more questions, if I don't have any questions, I can stand here and pontificate for 30 more minutes, or we can just call it a night. So let me know if you have an idea. Last few minutes, I'll give you a chance. Pop it in the chat. Let me know. Ask your question. Stick your idea in there, and we'll talk about that. But that's what I'm talking about. That was my thought for today. Look at how much we learned. Look at how much we saw from two related, distant events in two different parts of the country. And as much as we talk about the Second Amendment, have we really thought about the difference between being prepared to provide for your own security or being a subject of a government and waiting for it to provide your security? Well, somebody seems to like the work that I'm doing. Well, that's it. I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to pull the plug on it. If you are watching this delayed, or if you come up with an idea later, by all means, stick in the chat. I'll try to answer it as soon as I can. I appreciate you being patient with my still working out some of the technical details of how to make all this stuff work. I'm still working out the details. If you live in Middle Tennessee, I really would love it if you would come down to Shelbyville next month. It's the second Thursday of the month. It's at 6 p.m. Central Time. I'm at the Bedford County Shelbyville Public Library in the community room right in front. I'd love to have you here because I'd love to have more of an interactive conversation. That's really what I'm hoping to have happen. If you are not in that area, I appreciate when you join live because I appreciate the questions and the interactions. And, again, mostly I'm hoping that you'll help spread the word, help share what we're trying to do here. Don't look at this simply as this is what Paul does. Look at this as a community. Look at this as a group. Yeah, as what Etta said, I want to know that I am secure, no pretending. Exactly. And which is why, now you have to remember, I used to live in upstate New York. Actually was born in New York City. I used to go through Rockland County regularly. It's just north of New York City. I am relatively familiar with the area they're talking about. And trust me, in New York City, it's next to impossible to get a carry permit unless you're politically connected. In the rest of upstate New York, it kind of depends on which county you're in. But that's the question. And I've heard some really great discussions about both these events. Will we secure our own liberty? We have the Declaration of Independence, unalienable rights, a life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That doesn't mean they're given to you. That means you have the right to defend them. Are we going to defend them? And we start, and as much as I'm like programs, to me, I think we start by educating ourselves and educating our families and educating our neighbors. I've seen some very interesting and enthusiastic reactions when I'm talking directly to people and they start to see, oh, I'm beginning to see what you're talking about, that we have to do this for ourselves. So, now we're starting to get some traffic. Hey, what do you allow? Are sheriffs independent from state legislature? Ed, excellent question. The answer is yes and no. A sheriff is an elected position, right? A sheriff is elected by the people of the county and is therefore responsible to the people of the county. The sheriff takes an oath to support the Constitution. Now, in most states, and Virginia is unique. Virginia, there are several states that have what they call Davis laws, I think, where the state says, no, you cannot, you have to do what we say, period, end of story. There's just one problem. Laws have a hierarchy. So, I'm going to use Virginia because they're in the news lately. Let's say Virginia passes this law that says we're going to ban a firearm. We're going to prevent you from owning a particular type of firearm. We're going to infringe on your right to keep and to bear a certain type of firearm or certain firearm accessories. Well, the problem is Article 6, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and that only federal laws made pursuant to the Constitution are also supreme. And treaties made within the powers of the federal government are supreme. So you have the Constitution, you have federal laws made pursuant to the Constitution, meaning following the Constitution, not just in form, but in substance. By the way, Alexander Hamilton and I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. The Chief Justice and the Marbury versus Madison decision both said that a federal law that is abhorrent to the Constitution, that does not follow what the Constitution says, is against the Constitution, is void. Their words, void, of no effect. So here's your poor sheriff, and this is what I want to do. Here's your poor sheriff, and they're sitting in their office, and the state legislature passes a blatantly unconstitutional law. Now, the judges, Article 6, Clause 2 says the judges in each state are bound by the U.S. Constitution, even if it's in contradiction to state law or state constitutions. Article 6, Clause 2. You can look it up. I don't have the quote in front of me. So that means a judge really should look at the state law that says, wait a second, that's a violation of your right to keep and bear arms, and throw it out. The problem is they don't. That's a whole nother issue. But here's your sheriff saying, wait a second, I swore or affirmed that I would support the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I have two laws in conflict. Pretty much by definition of having a constitutional republic, the Constitution must win. Therefore, no, I will not enforce an unconstitutional law. Now here's the problem. Who's going to stand behind them and help? That's the dig. That's where you and I have to get involved. I'm setting up a meeting with my sheriff. I want to meet him. I want to talk to him. I want to know him so that if something like this comes out in my county, that I will be someone who can be there to help him. So the answer is, the sheriff is not directly accountable. They're accountable to enforce laws, but like anything else, only valid laws. And a law that's in violation of the Constitution is not a valid law. I know it's a little weird, but we don't think that way, do we? But the problem is he's just one man, or she is just one woman. Are we going to support them when the state comes at him and says, you better do this or else? Are you going to ask your sheriff to stand up for you and your rights, and you better be willing to stand up for his or hers? So that's an excellent question, Etta. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad we got it in here. So yeah, they are directly responsible to the people. They don't report to The state legislature, they report to the people because the people elected them. This is different, by the way, than a police chief. A police chief or a police commissioner reports to the mayor of the city, but that's a different situation. We need correct information on political hype, absolutely. Assault weapons a misnomer. All weapons are assault weapons. We have ambiguously written law. Yeah, well, assault weapons a scare term. It's a boogeyman. Right? It's a way to make things seem scary. I tried this back when I lived in New York when they were working on the SAFE Act. I challenged a representative. I sent him a letter, open letter, challenged him. Says, do me a favor. I basically said, what you're doing is wrong. Come with me to the range, bring whoever you want, and I will prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that you were wrong. By the way, if you think he showed up, you were wrong. Never heard from him. But this is what I was going to do. At the time, I had two 22 long rifles, right? One, simple Marlin, plastic stock, your standard squirrel gun, right? Another one in black plastic that looked kind of like an AR. If you didn't know what an AR really looked like, it looked scary. And what I wanted to do is I was going to take these two rifles, I'm going to lay them down at the range, and I was going to invite the representative with whoever they wanted to bring, says, do me a favor, pick these guns up there and shoot them and tell me which is an assault rifle, which is an assault weapon. Great, because assault rifle is a specific military term. Which is an assault weapon? Because they're both semi-automatic 22s. They are exactly the same gun with different furniture on it. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Assault is an action. You know what? If I take a gun and I beat you over, and I grab it by the barrel and I beat you over the head with a stock, I've assaulted you with a weapon. But we're back to using words to scare people. And to me, the best way to deal with people who use words to scare people is to show them just how hollow those words are and show people what the truth is. You know, people talk about AR-15s like they're weapons of war. No, they're not. The AR-15 was developed. The AR-10 was developed. Then they made the Armalite made the AR-15, and the military thought that was a great idea. Let's turn it into what became known as the M16. But most of this comes from ignorance, often I believe willful ignorance. But you're right. Terms like assault weapon, we need to be we need to take bad information, replace it with good information. When you show people just how hollow this stuff is, a certain percentage will listen to you, a certain percentage will ignore you, but always remember, you're rarely only talking just to the person you're talking to. You're talking to the other people that are listening. So, you know, I sometimes people ask, why do you go on with these conversations with this person on Facebook or on YouTube, and you know what they're saying makes no sense. They're not listening. Why do you keep going? I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to everybody else who's paying attention as well. Everyone else is looking at that and seeing that person get angry and calling me names and doing stuff like that. And I'm calmly answering and responding with truth and with facts. Okay, Ed has been pretty active. Do we have anybody else? We burned up another 10 minutes. I love doing that. That's great. Again, a few more minutes. I'll give someone a chance to ask another question. Doesn't necessarily have to be on the Second Amendment or weapons or firearms. Or while I'm at it, notice it says the right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment doesn't say the right to keep and bear firearms. Again, used to live in New York. They said you couldn't own a knife if you could open it with one hand. You couldn't own a pocket knife if you could open it with one hand. They called it a drop blade, switch. They called it. They're trying to make it sound like a switchblade. Apparently, there are a lot of cities that have rules about what type of pocket knife you can carry. Why do they want us disarmed? Because they want us dependent. You know, it's really hard to infringe on the rights of an armed people. It's really hard to enforce really bad laws on an armed people. There's a quote from a founding father that I'm not going to try because I'm not going to get it right enough, but basically said, you know, you can't enforce bad laws on an armed populace. They won't let you. I had someone tell me, well, you know, you're not going to stand up to the National Guard. I did some research between the regular military and the National Guard and the reserves. There's something like 1.5, maybe 2 million people that the federal government can call on to actually take up arms. There are 300 million firearms in this nation. 300 million. What kind of a ratio is that? I mean, that's 150 to 1. Okay, so people have, they're like me, they have more than one firearm, right? So let's say only 100 million people actually own a firearm of some type. If 100 million people own a firearm, if only 2% of those are actually willing to fight their government, that's 2 million people. Versus 1.5 million and 2 million people, how many of those actually want to enforce some of these laws? There's a reason why our founding fathers wanted us armed. Okay, I'm going to pull the plug on that. I'm going to ask you one more time, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. You might even see the QR code, although I don't know how well it works. Put in comments, let me know what you think. Hopefully, again, I'm really trying to do this. I'm trying to do this full time. And I'm really trying to get people to help me engage in what we're doing. Let's start a real membership. Let's start, let's not just be me talking to you over the internet. Let's get a group together. Let's have a real membership where we are educating ourselves and educating people and developing the tools that we can use to make this better. Not necessarily for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children. And if I didn't put you all to sleep, hopefully I'll see you next time on the Constitution Study. Thank you.
You have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long